Take care of your body as if you were going to live forever. And take care of your soul as if you were going to die tomorrow. These words hit so hard, and they were written almost 2,000 years ago by Marcus Aurelius and can be found in his book, Meditations. Welcome back to What a Fuster Cluck. On this week's episode, I'm going to be moving away from the scandals going on in politics right now and move back to my Be Your Own Healthcare Advocate series. And what I would love to focus on is the MAHA movement and the amazing strides and amazing success that they have had a year into the new administration, and why I am so incredibly thankful for RFK Jr. and Dr. Jay Bhattacharya in particular. The body matters, ladies and gentlemen. It's not just something that we need to neglect or that we should neglect or abuse. Some of us take a long time to have that realization. Others figure it out a lot sooner. Some of us have to realize that in moments where it may be too late, with a terminal diagnosis, an unexpected sickness, etc. The other thing that's important to keep in mind is that the mind matters just as much as the body. I truly believe in my own lived experience that whenever you come upon bad times, you really do have the choice of how you are going to make it through those times and how you are going to perceive those times. And if you can get the mind and the body in a balanced alignment, you have won the game. Now, this is not something that I have mastered myself, but it is certainly a work in progress for me. What's amazing to me is knowing that almost 2,000 years ago, others were very well aware that this was a thing. And without the internet and the chaos of modern life, the fact that they took the time to write these things down and realize just how important they truly were is a message that should never get lost in history. Marcus Aurelius rejected the notion that health is purely external or pharmaceutical only. He emphasized things that you hear me talking about on this podcast with regularity: the importance of daily habits, discipline, moderation, and awareness. Principles echoed today in conversations around nutrition, movement, sunlight, sleep, and mental health resilience. It's a powerful historical reminder that the mind-body connection isn't new, that modern medicine isn't rediscovering something. This is what ancient philosophy already understood. I want to tell you a story of one of my own healthcare journeys. I've stated a few times before some of the medical issues that I've experienced throughout my life, all of which I can honestly attribute to stress and anxiety from an early age in my childhood. This story, also triggered by stress, is about a diagnosis I received that turned out to be not the diagnosis itself, but the treatment turned out to be completely wrong. And had I not known and had the education I've had and done the independent research I've done, I may have fallen into the daily pharmaceutical trap like so many others. Several years ago, I was feeling incredibly stressed out at work, in life, just totally depleted. Young kids at home, working full time, feeling like, my life is approaching that halfway point. Am I living in my purpose? And the stress was just compounding. And before I knew it, I started having regular stomach pains. And they just got worse and worse. And a friend of mine who happens to live in my neighborhood, I will never forget this day. We were sitting on the sidelines of a flag football practice, and she's a nurse, and I was telling her about the stomach problems that I was experiencing, the pain. And she said, "You should probably go to the emergency room if you have another one of these attacks." And I kind of looked at her like, oh, like, I don't know that it's emergency room appropriate. And she said something that has stuck with me for a long time. She said, and I'm going to botch this. This isn't verbatim, but this was my takeaway. She basically said, everybody thinks the emergency room is for a heart attack or a broken bone, but it's really not. It's really, if you're feeling any kind of way where something could be really wrong and you need more than the care that you can get at a regular doctor's office, you need to go to the emergency room. And so one morning I woke up, I'll never forget it. It was a Wednesday morning, and the stomach pain was so bad that I almost started to feel it in my chest. And now I'm really freaking out because I started thinking, am I having a heart attack? Is this like the preliminary stages of some kind of heart disease that I just thought was some kind of a stomach problem, like acid indigestion or GERD or something like that? And so I took the kids to school and I immediately went to the ER. And of course, they did all kinds of scans, and thank God it wasn't a tumor, which I shouldn't do this, but since I was a little kid and I saw the movie Kindergarten Cop, I have constantly said things like I think it's a tumor because I was such an over exaggerator hypochondriac. And of course, I was thankful it wasn't a tumor, but they did say you need to see a gastroenterologist. Your blood work looks fine. Everything looks clear in the stomach. So I at least had the relief that, okay, this isn't some blockage. I'm not having a heart attack and I don't have a tumor. So this is good. So then I took the steps to follow up with a gastroenterologist, and our lovely medical system that's been completely destroyed and corroded by health insurance. Of course, it took me months of going through what my previous guest, Lane Tiggis, refers to as the carousel of care until I finally got to a gastroenterologist and I finally got an endoscopy, which is where they go in through the throat, down through the esophagus, and into the stomach, and they check everything out. I will never forget waking up from that experience, which, first of all, the post op, in my opinion, is ridiculous because you're still kind of coming down off the high of the anesthesia. And the doctor comes and talks to you as if you're in any state of mind to be having a legitimate conversation. And so, just food for thought. I do think, I understand it's like churn them and burn them, get them in, get them out. That's our healthcare system as is run by insurance companies. But really, I should have been there in post-op longer than I was to really kind of gather myself, get some fluids in me, and then have a serious conversation with the doctor. But so he came to me and I was still feeling a little bit loopy. And he said, you have a stomach ulcer and you might have Barrett's esophagus, which eventually could turn into cancer. And you're going to need to take a PPI, a proton pump inhibitor, for the rest of your life. And you're also going to need to take this other medication. I think it was called sucralfate to heal the ulcer in your stomach. Now, luckily for me, I had already started seeing a functional practitioner for hormone replacement therapy. And so, of course, I immediately went to my functional doctor, who was phenomenal. He talked to me on the phone. He checked in on me. I had office visits with him, and he offered me a plethora of other alternatives outside of prescription pharmaceuticals. He told me about DGL, which is something that can help coat and heal the stomach. He told me about oh my gosh, slippery elm, another thing that can kind of coat and heal the stomach. He told me about aloe vera juice, which is phenomenal for your immune system, but also for healing your stomach and helping with acid indigestion, among a myriad of other protocols. Now, I will say, for a lot of people in the hustle and bustle that is today's day and age, a lot of times it's just easier to fill that prescription and take that pill. It's harder. It's a lot harder to invest in the more holistic approaches. So I want to recognize that. And it can also be a lot more costly, which is seriously so unfortunate. But in any event, I did all of those things. For the first 6 weeks after the endoscopy, I was a little scared because I'm like, oh God, I don't want to have Barrett's esophagus. Well, luckily, all of the biopsies came back negative. So there was no Barrett's esophagus. I didn't need to worry about any of that. But in any event, I was nervous. And so I started taking the prescriptions that they gave me, which was essentially Prilosec. And they also gave me that sucralfate. I got so sick from those medications, I cannot tell you. My face, neck, and chest broke out in a rash. My gut was an absolute wreck. And I just remember thinking, this is horrible. Like, I cannot believe that I have to take this stomach medication for the rest of my life that is absolutely destroying my gut. And I was so aggravated to know it did take me a good 6 months to truly heal without the prescription medication. I couldn't tolerate the prescriptions. And I'm like, I'm not going to do this. So I committed to the holistic route. And guess what, you guys? I went back for a follow up endoscopy, completely healed. And I went back for a follow up 2 years later, which was just this past November. And that same doctor who told me you're going to need to be on a PPI for the rest of your life was like, your stomach looks amazing. Everything looks great. Complete healing. The esophagus looks good. He did say, like, of course, he noticed a little bit of like symptoms of acid reflux, but that's just normal as we age. And more people need to realize that it's not that your stomach is producing too much acid. Actually, studies show that as you age, your stomach actually produces less acid, which is why many times indigestion gets worse the older you get, because your body, just like everything else as you age, is just not doing the things that it used to, and it's not producing the same amount of acid as it used to. And so why would this cause acid reflux? Well, because you're putting the same amount of food into your body without the same amount of acid to counteract and help digest that. So there are holistic or over-the-counter supplements and herbs that you can take to help increase your stomach acid. I cannot recall what the name of that is right now, so please look into that. If you're somebody who thinks that you're suffering from acid reflux for the reason of having too much stomach acid, which again, as you age, is actually turning out to not be the case. And so suppressing stomach acid even more with these PPIs can just make matters worse. So that's one of my stories, and just another way of how I was able to be my own health advocate and get myself better and not have to be on a prescription pharmaceutical for the rest of my life, as I was told by a very good gastroenterologist. Now, this is no shade to the doctor. He's a great guy, but at the end of the day, that's what I really wish that more people would understand, is that doctors are given a license to practice medicine. My nono, God rest his soul, my grandfather used to say that to me. I can remember him saying it as early as being in middle school, because he was always very cognizant of breath. And I remember he used to talk to us a lot of times about breathing from your diaphragm. I don't know that he actually said it was your diaphragm, but when we would get overly excited as kids, I remember sometimes he would put his hand, he had huge hands, on top of mine and just remind me to slow down and take a breath. And he would always say, a doctor is given a license to practice medicine. This does not make the doctor an expert. Now, I know some doctors or healthcare professionals will be offended by that, but I would ask that you humble yourself and understand that your journey as a doctor is no different than any other profession. It takes an exorbitant amount of hours to put into something to truly be an expert, to truly be one of the greats. And if you are not consistently humbling yourself that you don't know it all, and there is always more information for you to learn and discover, if you become so set in your ways that you cannot, for the life of you, see and experience and embrace what could be an alternative therapy, we will never move forward out of this ridiculous hamster wheel in the United States of America that is our corrupt healthcare system. Which brings me to some of the things that I wanted to cover on today's episode, but I really just wanted to share my story as a premise. All right. Traditional medicine treats symptoms with drugs and procedures. It rarely addresses root causes like nutrition, lifestyle, inflammation, and even the environment that you live in. And I'm not just talking about the environment outside and the chemicals and the cell phone towers and the exhaust from the cars. I'm talking about the piece of your environment too. What is it like where you work? Is it a highly abusive atmosphere where people are completely not appreciated? What is it like in the home that you live? So when I say environment, that is a twofold statement. Chronic diseases like diabetes, obesity, and heart disease and mental health conditions are exploding. And yet, medical training rarely teaches our doctors how to prevent these things. The more, as much as I love capitalism, the more we live in this rat race, the less we are stopping to balance our cortisol, which is so important. This is like the lamest thing, but it's the truest thing. The old expression, get outside and smell the roses, is so powerful in today's culture. I myself am a victim of this. I sit in front of my computer for almost 9 hours a day, most days, Monday through Friday, in my full-time job or under fluorescent lighting when I'm actually in the office, and meeting after meeting after meeting. And it's like, oh my God, Lola, you have got to get out from in front of this computer and go touch grass, go stand on some rocks, let the sun hit you for 15 minutes, breathe the air outside, and get out of your cubicle or your office space. It is just so important, which is why I am thrilled with all the trash that we can talk about the Trump administration and some of the disappointments and the Epstein files and war with Iran and, you know, capturing Maduro in Venezuela and all these different things that we can talk about and have all these different, political opinions about. At the end of the day, one of my biggest reasons for being so excited about Trump's victory was RFK and Jay Bhattacharya. A little bit of information. RFK Jr. was given a position as the HHS secretary. This is our Health and Human Services Department. What has he actually done so far in the 1 year since he's been in this administration? So many amazing things. It's hard for me to know where to begin, but let me just name a few. Number one, flipping the food pyramid. This might sound absolutely ridiculous, but this is so major. When I saw an article come out that was actually saying that Lucky Charms was more nutritious than an actual whole food, I damn near fell off my chair and thought, we have lost our freaking minds to say that a box of cereal, which in the United States includes artificial dyes, don't get me started on those, a box of cereal so overly processed with freaking marshmallows in it is nutritious. It's a joke. It is a joke. And it's honestly heartbreaking for me to think that people out there thought, oh, goody, like I'm eating my Lucky Charms, I'm healthy. And how shameful to whoever wrote and published that article in a major, major magazine. It is utterly shameful and incredibly misleading. So flipping the food pyramid, major, major policy change. In January 2026, RFK Jr. and USDA leadership unveiled a historic reset of the U.S. nutrition policy with new dietary guidelines for Americans that recenter eating on whole, real foods and reduce emphasis on ultra-processed carbohydrates. Some of the key shifts were prioritizing protein and healthy fats. The American Heart Association has done a humongous disservice to the American public. Does everybody remember the margarine craze? How could margarine, which is ultimately an uber processed food, a fake food, be better than real butter? I mean, let's just think about this logically for a few minutes. Guys, saturated fat is a necessary nutrient for the human body. Trans fat, whole other conversation, but saturated fat, such a necessity. So prioritizing protein and healthy fats, major building blocks for the human body over a freaking box of Lucky Charms, okay? Consuming full fat dairy with no added sugars. It kills me that in my kids' school, they give them chocolate milk. I wouldn't even care so much. I'd be like, all right, drink the chocolate milk, except it's low fat or no fat chocolate milk, which is essentially like drinking sugar water. You are taking all of the healthy benefits out of that milk, that full, real fat. You are taking it out of the milk, and you are essentially leaving kids with probably an artificially flavored box of sugar water that isn't even whole food or real milk. It's absolutely, absolutely ridiculous. Okay, it also emphasizes vegetables, fruits, again, healthy fats, and whole grains with a sharp reduction of processed foods, added sugars, and additives. Again, this should be common sense, ladies and gentlemen. How is this not common sense? Why is it not common sense? Because we were all brainwashed in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s to believe that food coming out of a box is the healthiest thing that you can put in your body, which is insane when you really sit down and start to think about it. Now, RFK makes a lot of statements sometimes that I think are great. We talk about moderation, and one of the things he says is if it comes in a package, you should probably avoid it. Now, I know sometimes vegetables are packaged or whatever, but the thing of it is, if you look across your diet and the majority of what you are eating is coming out of a box or a can and is latent with preservatives, are you doing the best thing for your body, or are you eating out of convenience? This is why it's so important to remember to do the predominance of your grocery shopping on the outer aisles of the grocery store. It's such an easy thing to remember. What's on the outer shelves of the grocery store? Your fruits, your veggies, your lunch meat, your poultries, your fishes, your eggs, your dairy. All of those things are typically on the outer perimeter of at your grocery store. If you're spending the bulk of your grocery shopping in those center aisles, you are likely latent with chemicals. You are likely introducing just a crap ton of preservatives into your body. And what are those things going to do over time? Raise cholesterol, increase plaques. Just the list goes on and on. So please try to take these as tips, and it's never too late to make these changes in your life. I'm just so incredibly thankful just for this one seemingly simple change, which took 11 months and a lot of data review and really looking at what is the science actually telling us to get this food pyramid flipped. And I am so incredibly thankful. These guidelines represent one of the most significant federal nutrition policy shifts in decades and directly reverse longstanding USDA and HHS guidance trends. All right, next up, Take Back Your Health tour and implementation. RFK Jr. has been touring the states to promote the guidelines and underline the need for real food in schools and community health. Local farmers and food producers are highlighted as part of the solution, presenting a return to agricultural roots. Few things I want to say about this. Number one, I have 2 kids in school. Where we live, they actually get free lunches and breakfast, which is an amazing benefit. But when I think about what they are serving the kids in school, now I try to pack my kids' lunches sometimes, but they can go in the school lunch line. I can't stop them from doing that. I guess I could probably try to, but it wouldn't be easy. But it's kind of like funny that mozzarella sticks are something that they get for lunch at school, which let's face it, if it was real mozzarella and it was breaded with real semolina breadcrumbs and not this garbage enriched bleached flour, and then it's of course dunked and deep fried in, probably vegetable oil, the worst of the worst. If it was like real mozzarella sticks that were fried in tallow, let's say, or olive oil for that matter, or avocado oil, and they were made with real wheat, real semolina wheat or something along those lines, I'd probably be like, this is great. Yeah, it's fine. Like, no problem. But that's not what we're talking about here. And we are just pushing this food into our kids' bodies, knowing that it is not a densely nutritious food. Now, I want to be respectful and acknowledge the fact that there are many impoverished people out there, and a lot of times, many times, oftentimes, kids in this country, which is just sick when you think about the wealth that our country has accumulated, to know how many kids we have that are actually hungry, and schools are sometimes the only place where they get a meal. And so you're going to take what you can get, but we can do better. And this isn't something that we can just rip the Band-Aid off. So we need to understand patience truly is going to be a virtue here. We cannot expect our farmers to all stop using pesticides. It would just crumble our agricultural situation. It would completely crumble it. It's not sustainable, but we can start to introduce things in a step-by-step fashion until we get the multitude of our farmers all operating as farmers used to. And there's also a lot of research and development going on into ways to actually prevent weeds by using lasers, which sounds crazy, but hey, why not? Like, it's possible. Anything is possible, right? The sky is the limit with everything, ladies and gentlemen. You just need the right people, the smart people in the room who can figure these things out. There's ways to prevent pests from, like, completely engulfing your crops that don't have to involve deadly chemicals like Roundup or whatever else they're spraying on these crops to kill all the bugs. Like, don't even get me started out there with the vegans and the vegetarians who have absolutely no idea how difficult it is to actually farm almonds and what has to happen, the chemicals that are sprayed, how it depletes our soil, our once densely nutrient dense, rich, minerally dense, rich soil just completely depleted from all of these chemicals. We have to start thinking about what these things are doing before it's too late, and it's already bad enough. So what he's doing here with this Take Back Your Health tour, educating people, which is most important. Education, education, education. The more you know, and if you know better, you do better. So in time, I hope and pray that regardless of who the next administration is, that they continue this MAHA movement, because we truly are moving in the right direction, back to what Mother Nature intended, which is the most important thing. We should not be putting this ultra processed food into our kids' bodies in schools on a regular basis. Next up is cost, waste, and chronic disease and healthcare reform, other areas that RFK is just tackling one at a time, one by one, in a very passionate fashion. HHS states nearly 90% of healthcare spending ties to diet, lifestyle, and related chronic disease, emphasizing nutrition as a public health priority, which it should be. A sick country is not a strong country in any way, shape, or form. It will end up a poor country, and it will end up, honestly, a target country. RFK Jr. has also spoken about reducing Medicaid waste, cutting fraud, and implementing agreements to lower prescription drug costs. We pay some of the highest prices for prescription drugs out of any other country in the world. I understand that a lot of people think this is a Trump talking point, but even Mark Cuban, who's been very harsh on Donald Trump, has his cost plus drugs. I believe that's what it's called, cost plus drugs, and offers pharmaceutical products at a reduced price that you won't get going through your insurance company because of the ridiculous amounts of corruption in the industry with pharmacy benefit managers. The cycle is disgusting. One day I'll do a podcast all about PBMs and the corruption in our health insurance industry. All right. Next up, proposed reforms and what's being discussed. Nutrition training for doctors. You guys might not know this, but about 75% or more of major medical schools in this country do not get nutritional training. RFK Jr. and HHS have publicly called for major reforms to nutrition education in medical training. This seems like it should be standard information, right? But doctors are actually trained more in pharmacology. Here's the pill you give for this thing, not in every nutrition. Your mental and physical health, your nutrition are the basis of your entire body's health system. So the fact that doctors get no training in nutrition is a huge red flag, and I cannot wait to see this implemented. Nutrition education should be required at every stage of medical training, both pre-med, med school, licensing, residency, etc. This is something RFK is pushing for. Medical schools are going to start to be held accountable for measurable progress in these areas. Such a big deal, such a huge blessing. And who can argue with this? Who doesn't want this? Please, somebody present me with the counter argument for this. Did RFK Jr. factually say doctors don't get nutrition training? Yes, he has said that. And while most U.S. medical schools do claim to include nutrition content, many students report minimal hours of instruction. I said it just a few minutes ago. 75% of schools lack required clinical nutrition classes, indicating a significant gap here. Various studies suggest most physicians receive little practical training to counsel patients on nutrition through curriculum that varies school to school. The other thing is diet and mental health links. RFK has spoken about diet impacting mental health and referenced claims about certain diets, such as low carb or keto diets, potentially influencing brain conditions, though experts caution that evidence is early and not definitive. Well, of course, experts are going to caution on that because it's against the status quo. But at the end of the day, how can you not see that food can truly be medicine? And if you are a child with ADHD or you are a person with mental health issues, depression, anxiety, how can you not see the basic understanding that putting processed foods or sugar into your body when you're already somebody with anxiety wouldn't just exacerbate that situation by the very nature of the ingredient? So these are actually common sense things that people are pushing back on because they feel attacked when they shouldn't feel attacked. Again, this brings me back to the point about humbling yourself, that there is always more to learn. There is always more to learn, and we can always be better, and we should always be looking to advance our understanding of the human body and health and wellness in general. So that's enough about RFK Jr., who I'm just super thrilled with. And also, guys, I just want to throw out there that I love his transparency. He's been criticized recently for saying something on a podcast about how he once snorted cocaine off of a toilet seat. And it's really not funny, but it just goes to show you, like, when you're truly someone living with addiction. Please check out my episode on addiction. When you're truly somebody living with addiction, it's like there really is no low, right? When you're battling that, there really is no low. So sniffing cocaine off of a toilet seat might sound disgusting to somebody who's not an addict, but like it's probably not as uncommon as you think. And I really just applaud him for his vulnerability and talking about that stuff openly and honestly. And it makes me respect him even more, which sounds crazy. Like, why would I respect a dude who's sniffing cocaine off of a toilet seat? But I respect the fact that he owns it, that he is in recovery every day. And look what he's done in his life now to really turn things around. And again, just open people's eyes to what's really going on. My next favorite guy is Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who now leads the NIH. I am so super stoked about this. Our National Institute of Health and the Oversight and Reform Committees. So who is Dr. Jay Bhattacharya? If you haven't heard, he's the director, again, of the National Institutes of Health since 2025 and is also serving as of February 26th as the acting director of the CDC. Oh, such a groundbreaking move for people, again, who want to move in the right direction, especially post-COVID with all of the just draconian things that we had to experience during that time. Let me give you some background for anybody who thinks Dr. Jay Bhattacharya is just another quack. This is his professional background pre-COVID-19. He has a dual MD and PhD from Stanford University. Dr. Bhattacharya earned both medical and economics doctorates at Stanford University, a prominent, well-respected university, which uniquely positioned him to both analyze health issues on the economic side from both clinical and economic perspectives. Number 2, Stanford University faculty. He rose to prominence as a professor of medicine with additional appointments in economics and health policy. His research focused on population health, aging, and economics of healthcare and the well-being of vulnerable populations. Thank you for caring, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. Director of Stanford's Center on Demography and Economics of Health and Aging. This leadership role put him at the intersection of health outcomes and economic policy. This is the type of resume that I want to see for someone who is leading the NIH. He's a published researcher. He authored well over 150 peer-reviewed articles articles in medical, economic, and policy journals well before COVID-19, establishing his academic credentials. This is not some rando guy who Trump just threw in there. This was a very well-respected doctor up until COVID. Let's talk about that. Dr. Bhattacharya's visibility and influence expanded dramatically during the COVID-19 pandemic. His positions challenged mainstream public health strategies and narratives and made him a controversial but widely recognized figure. Number one, the Great Barrington Declaration in October of 2020. Bhattacharya co-authored the Great Barrington Declaration, an influential open letter arguing that wide-scale societal lockdowns and school closures were more harmful than beneficial. Don't get me started on the awful videos that we all saw circulating of these poor 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds in daycare centers with these, I don't want to call them awful people because they were just so incredibly fear-mongered, but the way that these kids were treated, constantly pulling those masks up over their sweet little faces, forcing them to breathe in their own disgusting spit as if a child has any idea how to properly wear a mask. It just infuriates me to this day. And I'm just so thankful to be living in one of the states where these practices, these laws, these demands didn't plague the society that I live in and that my children live in. But I know what it's done to people living in states like New York, New Jersey, just the social impact it had, the learning impact that it had. It's too much to even fathom. The Declaration advocated for focused protection. Makes sense, right? Protecting only the most vulnerable populations while allowing lower risk groups to continue with normal activities, a strategy that sharply contrasted what mainstream public health policies were at the time. This is talking about vulnerable populations, sick people, elderly people, people with cancer, right? All of these people were a more vulnerable population. And this would have saved our country a ton of money in government spending, government overspending, I should say, and just printing money during COVID. It would have saved us so much if people would have just listened to reason instead of the fear mongering and the panicking when we knew so much more than was released. The Great Barrington Declaration became one of the most discussed pandemic policy proposals and brought Bhattacharya significant national attention. Number two, his critiques of lockdowns, mandates, and public health policy. Bhattacharya was an early and vocal critic of broad lockdowns, mask mandates, and other coercive interventions, arguing they caused significant social, economic, and health harms. He publicly argued that the risks of COVID-19 were often overstated and that many more people had mild or asymptomatic infections than official counts suggested. His opinions challenged the dominant narrative from public health agencies and became a central point of debate about pandemic policy, in complete contrast to good old Anthony Fauci. If you have not read the book, The Real Anthony Fauci, I implore you to read this book or at least pick up the Cliff Notes. In my opinion, he is the epitome of evil, and the allegations against him, they should be staggering for crimes against humanity, in my opinion. What he did to children in Africa, his research during the AIDS crisis was so Frankensteinish. It's almost reminiscent of Nazi scientists. And I say that as a person who wants to be really careful with throwing around the word Nazi, but just pure evil. So please take the time to read that book or get the Cliff Notes on it, and you judge for yourself. All right. Public engagement, media, and policy debates. Throughout the pandemic, Bhattacharya became a frequent media commentator, thank God, appearing on national news and in interviews to discuss pandemic strategy, public health policy, and economic impacts. He testified before public committees and participated in expert roundtables, defending his views on lockdowns and mandating changes. historic appointment as the NIH director. Again, thank you, God. President Trump nominated him to lead the National Institutes of Health, and he became the 18th director, making him one of the most powerful figures in the U.S. biomedical research policy. He is the first Indian American to hold that role. But America's so racist. Trump is so racist. Like, come again with that narrative. It's not going to work. Number 2, emphasis on scientific debate and research reform. As NIH director, he's promoted open scientific debate and transparency, reflecting his longstanding views on dissenting perspectives in science. Who doesn't want more debate? Who doesn't want more transparency? With everything coming out about the Epstein files, how could we possibly sit here and just continue to go along and just pretend nothing to see here? No, we need more transparency, and Dr. Jay Bhattacharya is one of the people who will bring that to us. Number 3, expanded public health leadership role. As early as 2026, he was appointed acting director of the CDC while leading NIH, a consolidation seen as indicative of his influence on national health policy. I cannot state enough how thankful I am for these two gentlemen. For many years, RFK was labeled as a kook, a complete psycho, a total weirdo with a funky voice. Mainstream media did its damnedest to slander him, to make him look like this complete quack. And lo and behold, the work he is doing now is so commendable and so much better than what we have seen in literally decades. And if you are someone paying attention to the Epstein files and seeing all these psychos and all these billionaires, like, let's talk about Bill Gates for a quick second. If you are looking at some of the conversations between Epstein and Bill Gates, and you do not see that what lies behind that iron curtain is so utterly corrupt, and you have not had that light bulb moment yet, that RFK is not the enemy. He's the one speaking truth. He's the one bringing that transparency. And that Dr. Jay Bhattacharya brought a level-headed approach to COVID, which is what made him rise in his, I don't want to say fame, but respect from people who were also thinking about COVID from a more level-headed perspective. These two gentlemen have been groundbreaking in healthcare, in mental health, in how we think of ourselves, our bodies, our nutrition. And I am so excited for what the next 3 years will bring. And I truly hope and pray that regardless of the next administration, that these policies and this forward-moving progress doesn't end up completely thrown out the window. And if it does, I would really caution you to think about who you're voting for and who supports the status quo and who is really trying to get in here and make change. Because if we do not have our health, we have nothing. If you do not have your health, what do you have? I understand I have both my arms, I have both my legs, all my fingers, all my toes. I can see, hear, taste, smell. But I have lived with chronic illnesses. And so I do feel like I can speak about a lot of these things because it was only through finding people like RFK, and it was only through being unrelenting in my pursuit of being my own healthcare advocate, of knowing that there had to be more, of hearing my nono telling me doctors are given a license to practice medicine. Just because they say something doesn't make it 100% factual. And I'm just so thankful for what I've learned in my life and the healing that I have been able to do for myself. Never giving up, never stopping the fight. I tried for 20 years to heal my migraines. And I finally got that relief a year ago because I never gave up. I never gave up on being my own healthcare advocate and knowing this is not normal. I'm not meant to live like this. And I do not want to live the rest of my life constantly being bombarded with prescription medication for something that I know there has to be a different kind of solution for. For Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, for RFK Jr., some of the things I love about them is that they just drive the public conversation, and they do it in a way that has such care. They're never like talking down to you. They're never trying to push their ideology on you. They bring receipts. They bring receipts every time. They challenge orthodoxy. They're not without controversy. As I said, RFK is an open addict, still in recovery to this day, right? And embracing his recovery every day, and not lying about that, being completely transparent about it. So whether you all agree with these people or not, their roles will change the narrative about healthcare in this country. And they are finally bringing the debates that we so desperately need in government and public health. It's a shift from pharma procedure focus to prevention. Prevention is where it's at. As someone who worked in dentistry for 20 years, I can tell you that if you've got the cavity in your tooth, it's kind of already too late. Like, the idea is to prevent the cavity from happening. Once the cavity's there, you got to do the filling, right? And then your tooth is never going to be at 100% again. I don't know. It's the simplest thing that I can come up with at this point. But the emphasis on nutrition, lifestyle, and real food, it conflicts with decades of pharmaceutical and medical profit paths focused more on drugs and interventions than on prevention. How is this not common sense? Again, I ask you to just sit back and think about that. Prevention is everything. The chronic illness epidemic. Huge percentages of health spending go toward diseases heavily tied to diet and lifestyle, yet nobody's telling you to change your diet or telling you how to change your diet or giving you more resources and education to be able to do those things. Instead, they're just writing you the prescription and getting you out of the office because of this churn 'em and burn 'em mentality in medicine. Prevention can actually reduce costs and disease burden. Why is this a bad thing? Because it means Big Pharma and the medical industrial complex aren't going to make the same amount of money that they make today. But trust me, they will find a way, come hell or high water, regardless of what shifts actually happen. US versus Europe and Canada, food, ingredients, and policy. Products like certain industrial seed oils, food additives, and ultra-processed ingredients are far more prevalent and permitted in the United States processed foods than in other parts of the world like Europe or Canada. This is a topic that you can explore with, just take a minute, sit down, ask Google, ask ChatGPT, ask Grok, ask Perplexity, ask whoever. This is true. You cannot argue this. Other countries do not allow the same amount of garbage into their foods as we do. There's an indication called GRAS, which is generally regarded as safe for things like actual toxins and pesticides that are on our foods, actual preservatives that are in our foods. Now, maybe in small percentages, these things are okay. But when you're eating these things every day over time, can you not see how the problems will build up? Joint inflammation, weight gain, feeling a little depressed, not feeling like yourself, mental instability because your body's full of chemicals that it's trying to desperately get rid of and filter out. But when you're putting them in every day, it's like, hey guys, like eventually we're just going to get tired of being able to get all this stuff out. All right. Boutique medicine and cash pay models. Like I said when I was telling you the story about my stomach ulcer, this is an up and coming thing, and it's really a shame because these are typically cash pay practices. And I know and I wish that more people could afford this, and I wish that this was more standard operating procedures. But if you are someone who can afford to start going to a functional practitioner, even if it's just once a year, to get your labs done and really have an in-depth conversation about you, your body, and your healthcare, I implore you to try to find those. I constantly promote Ways to Well. Ways to Well is available now in almost all 50 states. It does come with a significant sign-up fee that I know can be really tough for people to afford, but I would implore you to look at your budget and find ways that you can cut back and try to do something like this to get a better handle on where you are and what you can do at this point in your life, regardless of your age. So to sum up this episode, a few things I want to say are: seek doctors who prioritize prevention. Seek doctors who ask you questions like, how are you sleeping? What are your eating habits like? Are you exercising? If you're going to the doctor and you're like, I keep getting these headaches, and the doctor's like, okay, I'm going to give you this prescription, that's a red flag. Abort mission. Find another doctor. I want to highlight the importance of diet, movement, sunlight exposure, and again, informed choice. Just because your doctor says this thing doesn't 100% make it true. Nothing has to be a lifelong sentence or a death sentence for that matter. Do your own research, find alternative therapies. So many things can honestly be cured by all of those things I just mentioned: diet, movement, sunlight exposure, and informed choice. Even things like diabetes, heart issues. Like, I'm not saying you can reverse all of these or completely cure all of these things, but you can sure as hell add to your longevity, and you can sure as hell avoid the prescription Ferris wheel and constantly having to pump your body full of all this stuff just by changing your diet and exercising more and getting outside and being with friends and family and just doing whatever it takes to live a more balanced lifestyle. I implore you to think critically about medical education and systemic incentives. That's going to do it for this episode of What a Fuster Cluck. I'm your host, Lolita Keys. And as always, remember to please like, subscribe, share, and rate the show. It's the only way that I can continue to grow. Please email me with any questions, fact checks, or guest ideas at whatafusterclucklk@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and until next time.